All right, good afternoon. The time is now 5:30, and I'd like to call to order the October 19th, 2021 Board of Directors Community Conversation event for the North Thurston Public Schools. I'd like to initiate roll call, starting with District 2, please.
This is Chuck Namett, District 2.
Jennifer Thomas, District 3.
Graham Sackerson, 4.
Dave Newkirk, District 5.
And Gretchen Maliska, District 1. If you could please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the
to
flag
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have the reading of the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the North Thurston Public Schools resides on the traditional lands of the Nisqually people. The Nisqually have lived on and cared for this land and these waterways since time immemorial. We make this acknowledgement to open a space of recognition, inclusion, and respect for our sovereign tribal partners and all Indigenous students, families, and staff in our community. Before we move forward, I believe that we have some information on interpreter services. Carmen, is that correct?
Yes, it is. So we're going to start those right now. Thank you.
Great. And Jennifer, I'd like to welcome you to the floor, please.
Oh, Zoom technology, I'm so sorry. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a community meeting conversation focused on strategic goal 5, preparedness of post-secondary success. Today, we're going to discuss outcome A, increased percentage of students passing classes in grades 6 through 9, culminating in an increased percentage of 10th grade students on track to graduate. Really excited to be here today, and I just want to thank all of you just for taking your time to be part of our community conversation. Troy Oliver reported on this goal at one of our September board meetings, and we're really excited to be able to extend this conversation in this community forum. This is the second community conversation that I've been able to experience as a board member, and while I'm really happy that we could continue the community conversations online, I can't wait to have them in person. I think it's going to be just a great experience. Community conversations are a really wonderful way to help to understand the experiences and the viewpoints of our stakeholders. It's a chance for us to learn more about the overall perspectives and experiences of our staff, our teachers, our parents, our kids, and our community members. And today we want to send out a special thank you to all of you who have joined, as well as to our panel members, Jenna Tate, Aaron Zazu, Carmen Parit Morales, Karen Owen, and Sharon Hamlin. We're really excited, and we look forward to hearing from everyone today.
All right, so I think I have the next part of our presentation just to give everyone some background and a little common knowledge about what the work has happened in North Thurston Public Schools for the last 3 or 4 years at our secondary schools around grading practices. I'm going to go through a slide presentation. I would encourage all of the members who are here, our community members that are with us today, as we go through those 4 the grading practices and what we call the 4 principles of grading, and that's principles LES. Keep in mind what one of those 4 is of most interest to you, because when we get in later into the program, there'll be an opportunity for you to go into a breakout room and provide feedback and ask questions on one of the 4 grading principles. So when we get to that point of the program, you'll have that choice. So as I go through this information right now, keep that choice in mind. So we'll work on the screen share. So I can see you, Graham, is the presentation up in front of you, or slide
Yes,
1
it
says
is.
save the date? Thank you. Excellent. So again, our conversation today is on secondary grading practices. So a little bit of the history of where we have been in this process. The grading and reporting practices were identified as a district improvement initiative in the fall of 2018. A 25-person panel led by Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services, Vicki Lamoureux, and supported with our high school and middle school principals. Had a 25-person 612 grading report task force that was organized, and their task was to make recommendations about grading for us. So the purpose that they came up with for grades are consistent reporting, reflect achievement of intended learning outcomes, and communicate achievement status to students, parents, and others. So to provide useful, timely, and actionable information that can be used by for students for self-evaluation, teachers and other staff to inform effectiveness of practice, and identify students available and in need of additional opportunities for learning. So here are the 4 guiding principles and guidelines that the committee came up with when they did this work. The first principle is grades should clearly communicate student success toward learning the standards. So a couple of the guidelines associated with that principle is learning standards and our targets need to be clearly articulated. The second one is assignments and assessments need to be aligned to these learning standards, and instruction is scaffolded to deepen student learning. The second principle and guidelines are students should have multiple opportunities to show what they know and what they can do. Some guidelines associated with this principle: a body of work should be assessed in order to demonstrate mastery for the students. Teachers are expected to provide supporting data for grades assigned, and the records should reflect an ample sampling of work. And grades shall be kept current through district-approved electronic grading system. And for us, the secondary, that is Skyward. The third principle and set of guidelines are students need time to practice and learn from their mistakes. So teachers should provide students opportunities to demonstrate their mastery of learning in a variety of ways. Teachers should use assessment and/or progress monitoring results to evaluate the effectiveness of their instruction and to plan for future instruction. And students will be provided opportunity for reassessment given they meet department criteria. We'll talk a little bit about the department criteria pieces in a bit. And the fourth principle and set of guidelines are, so we support learning through regular communication with families about student progress. So formally, we report progress reports 4 times a year through report cards, progress reports, and conferences. And Family Access, which is our online gradebook, is updated at the minimum every 2 weeks by teachers and is always available for parents and students to access. So in terms of some teacher practices, the first thing we've asked all of our secondary departments to do is get together as a team and say, what grading option do we want to choose? On the left, as I'm looking at the screen, there is the A through F model, which breaks down the grading percentage ranges for each one of those grades. So again, anywhere from 60 to 100% are passing grades with all the gradations between. The other is an option that a department can choose is a 4-point grading scale, starting at 1.3 essentially or better up to a 4.0 would define that scale. So there is some choice and some opportunity for selection within a department, but we do want a department within a school to be consistent in how they approach this. Another piece we talked about in terms of teacher expectations and outlines is extra credit. Extra credit opportunities should or will extend a student's learning in the content being taught. It should be related to the standards and the content, but it should be limited as well, as the students are still expected to complete regularly assigned work. In other words, extra credit should not take place of the original work or the original standards that were identified. In terms of weighted grades, we provided some guidance in terms of how teachers set up grade books for weighting of grades. We said that they should have at least 3 weighted categories. They could be practice, work habits, assessments or summative, formative, and or work habits. Each category should reflect a specific percentage of a grade range. So for example, practice, homework and practice 20%, work habits 0 to 10%, and then assessments being 60 to 80%. In order to provide feedback, there must be an identified range for the number and frequency of assessments. In other words, 4 to 10 assessments per semester, 1 summative every 4 weeks. This needs to be outlined so there's some consistency in how the grading is happening and how they're weighted. In terms of retakes, it is an expectation that retakes are available. Each content or program within a school will create accountability measures that will ensure students have re-engaged in learning. In other words, we don't want a student to fail a test and then come back in the next day and try to retake the same test without going through some activity that demonstrates they have actually done some work to learn and give us indication they would do better on a retake. Retakes may be woven into some disciplines in different ways, such as a literacy course, where there may be rough drafts prior to a final draft, so some scaffolding of the work. And then a retake may be in a different form than the original. So maybe a paper pencil test for the first one, a secondary retake, maybe a verbal assessment one-on-one with the student. In terms of late work, we ask that every teacher have a policy on late work. There needs to be consistency of application in the content area or grade level of the late work policy. We support the collaborative conversation PLC level, and also support the idea of creating incentives that can be considered for students who are turning in work all the time. I see many schools provide totem tickets or something like that for students that do well, as we just would walk through it at Nisqually today. So that would be an example of a positive re-incentive for students turning their work in on time. And then the last piece I'm going to touch on this evening before moving on with our program is some of the responsibilities of teachers, the grade level and department, or the content or grade level of the department and the district as it relates to making sure these grading practices are in place. So for a teacher, we expect formally grades being given 4 times a year. We expect the family access again to be updated at least once every 2 weeks, so it's consistent. We expect between the teacher and the content grade level that we're aligning our assignments to the standards. We're also, with the individual teachers in the grade level, limiting and aligning their extra credit to the appropriate standards. Across the system, we are holding ourselves accountable for using performance on assessments to inform ongoing instruction and PLC work. Aligning weight of assessments, practice, and work habits. We don't want it to be too skewed towards something that is less of an indicator of learning. We want to align the number and frequency of assessments across the system, develop a policy for how students get to take the retakes, plan the retake assessments, and then again, develop a policy for late work acceptance and the parameters associated with that. So I am going to go ahead and stop there. Keep in mind there's a little bit of background where we've been as a district, where we're going in terms of full and comprehensive implementation moving forward. And your feedback tonight will be very helpful. And I'm going to pass it along, I believe, to Gretchen Meliska, who will talk about our panel.
Thank you, Troy. So I just want to say thank you to our panel for joining us tonight and giving our board this learning opportunity. And I am actually going to speak to one panel member at a time. In a Zoom world, I think that might be a little easier. So I would like to invite Jenna Tate up first. She is a teacher from Timberline High School. And if you give me just a second, I might be able to see Jenna in the same time. Great. Thanks. I can see you now, Jenna. Thank you for your patience. So welcome tonight and thank you for being here. And you're really concentrating on the grading principle number 1 tonight. Grades should be clearly communicated student success towards learning the standards. And I have 3 questions for each panel member. They're the same question for each panel member, but each of your principles are different. So Jenna, the first question is, why is your grading principle important to student access? Oops, I can't hear you yet. Not yet. Not yet, but take your time, it's okay. Do you want me to move forward to our next panelist while you take a minute and try to figure out your volume? Okay, great. So Aranza Zu Carmen, I'd like to invite you forward. You are a student at North Thurston High School. And it just take me a second to find you on the screen. Oh, there you are. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi.
Thank you for being with us. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes.
Great, perfect. So you are speaking to principle number 2. Students should have multiple opportunities to show what they know and can do. And again, the first question is, why is your grading principle important to student success?
I believe that students should have, I'm sorry, I'm a bit nervous. It's my first time doing this, but
Take your time.
it's important for students to know that they have multiple opportunities to show what they can do, because, you know, in class, it's like much easier having the teacher, the students help you out, to as in a test, it's a lot harder just having you know your own knowledge and trying to do the work, as into after school or when you're free time, when you go in and talk one-on-one with your teacher and try and, you know, tell them what you know, how you are taking it. Because I know sometimes I do very well in class, I do very well in my homework, and then I go in and take a test and I don't do as well. And I think it's like important to the student's success, because this way the teachers are very aware of where you are and they know that you can do better. It's just a form of, you know, maybe working on your study habits and trying to improve them if you're not doing as well.
Thank you. That's really good feedback. What is going well with your grading principle?
Like I said before, I think what's going well is that you are giving information to your teachers during class, after school, in your test, and they're giving feedback back to you either over like Skyward or Canvas, either where you turn in an assignment or you don't. Because I know that in my class, I have a creative writing class, and I find it very helpful when I turn in writing and my peers give me feedback back, as well as my teachers, and it's really helpful for me to know that I can improve on what I'm doing. I think, as well as being able to retake exams gives you a better understanding of how well you are doing.
Thank you. And last question, what are areas for improvement from your perspective?
I think we are pretty good in improvement. I don't want to say that we can't improve because there's always room for improvement, but there's always as much as a teacher can do and as like certain people can do, because there's obviously retakes, there's like extra credit. But if the student isn't putting in like time and effort to show what they can do to the teacher, even though they know what they can do, it's not going to be very helpful for the student if the student isn't putting in effort.
Thank you. Your feedback is really important to us, and we're really glad you're here. So should we invite Jenna back? Did she figure out her sound yet? Or should I move forward with Karen? Not yet, Jenna. Okay, and if I could invite Karen Owen up for the next principal. She is our principal from Salish Middle School, and she is talking about Principal LE number 3. Students need time to practice and learn from their mistakes. Therefore, teachers are expected to incorporate a variety of assessment methods within their course and provide opportunities for reassessment.
All right, I'm hoping, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, okay. I think offering a variety of assessments and opportunities for that reassessment really does allow students, all students, to show mastery of the standards and receive a grade that's based upon the achievement on those standards. I think for grading really to be fair for kids and for everyone to experience success, it's important that we provide that equity and opportunity. We talk a lot about equity. I think old school grading practices were equity or fairness was seen as everybody taking the same test at the same time, with the same amount of time, the same way. Everything was all the same and it wasn't individualized in any way. And we know we've learned so much more about equity, and we know that it means really allowing students to have some things that might be different than another student. And I think it's based on their specific need and providing those specific adaptations for the students to access the learning and be able to demonstrate that learning in a different way. What I'm noticing a lot is that I see teachers with a variety of assessments and methods and ways to allow students to be able to show that learning on those standards. And I guess the other piece that I might add to that that's important for success is that we gather up enough student achievement data to make good, reliable decisions regarding a grade and that level of proficiency on the standard. You know, some students might need more opportunities to demonstrate their achievement. And I think classroom teachers are incredibly familiar with using a host of different assessment methods, but they all have a strong and clear purpose, as well as a goal and avoid biases. And I think teachers are beginning to learn more and more about different strategies, those universal design for learning strategies that are continuing to develop, and I think really accessing different ways and using the technologies that we have. And I think that was one really good thing out of the remote system, is that people really upped their skill set on using a variety of different technology tools.
Thank you, Karen. I think you answered all 3 of my questions right there, and I really appreciate that. I think you really talked about student success, what was really going well, and some improvements from your perspective. And we really appreciate your time and your participation. Next, I would like to invite Sharon Hamilton. She is a parent from River Ridge High School.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate this opportunity, especially as a parent, to engage in this organization and also on this panel. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, I know questions for me. So
Yes, sorry, it just takes me a second to find you. So we're really glad you're here and we're really thankful for your participation. Your principle that we're speaking to tonight is that we support learning through regular communication with families about student progress. And my first question for you tonight is, what is your grading principle? Why is your grading principle important to student success?
Well, I think about, there's numerous research that suggests that communication between the parent, the staff, the principal, teachers, it's just vital for the student to grow and learn as an individual and as a student, because it gives us positive feedback, whether it's positive, negative. It gives the student an opportunity to assess, figure out what they're doing great, what they're not doing great. It gives the parents a chance to assess how that student is doing. And it's just a great way to be collaborative. So if there's a problem, you can identify that problem and then, figure out ways to tackle that problem and resolve that problem. So it's just a vital tool. So I'm big on communication, and it's necessary.
Thank you. The next question we have for you is, what is going well with your grading principle number 4?
I honestly think everything's going great. I mean, there's always room for improvement, right? But without your grading system, how do we know as parents what that student is doing? We need that assessment quarterly. We need that access to the SKY website to find out what. I know for me, it was beneficial to be able to go into Skyward and assess my daughter's grades. It's beneficial for me to see those grades on a quarterly basis. It was beneficial to see it. Anytime I received a report, that was information to me. But it's also motivation for her. If she was doing extremely well, it gave her an opportunity to continue to excel. It's just a vital resource. So that's why I think that it's very important to keep those tools because we need them. Parents and students both need them.
Thank you. And talk to us a little bit about areas for room for improvement from your perspective.
You know what? I'm a big believer and firm believer that communication is the key. If that student, I know my daughter weren't doing well in some classes that she would have liked to have done better in, but we needed that communicated, because it doesn't give us false hope that she's going in a direction that she doesn't want to, right? So what can we improve on? Just continue to communicate, and not only with the student, but the parent. More communication, the better, because parents wants to know how their student is doing. So I appreciate the communication. So communication is the key for me.
Thank you. I really appreciate your feedback in our board. It's really important for our board to hear from your perspective as well. Thanks for being here. I'm going to try Jenna Tate one more time. Let's see if we can work out her sound.
Okay, is it working now?
Yes, yay.
Yay! I'm so sorry. I did this for a year. You'd think I'd have this figured out at this point, right? Okay.
So your principle, let me just repeat for you and we'll settle ourselves in again. Principle number 1, grades should be clearly communicated. Grades should clearly communicate student success towards learning the standards. And my first question for you is, why is your grading principle important to student success?
So it's really important. I loved when, 10, 15 years ago, we came into teaching by standards that were set by the state in each subject area. And then those are broken down by identifiable skill. That way students were being graded 100% on their skills and their ability to show what they can do and what they've learned, rather than just a student is putting out good effort or has pleasing behaviors. So it was a more accurate picture of student achievement, and progress is captured with grades. Grading should be a tool that's used by teachers to identify the progress of individual students towards achieving and mastering a skill or concept. So that gives a snapshot to all the stakeholders in the piece. If done well, scores and grades that students earn should help students understand what they're doing well and areas where they may need support or practice. For parents, they provide a progress report of their students' continued improvement or areas where they might be able to provide support at home. For teachers, it's an indicator of areas where they may need to offer enrichment or supplementary instruction in the classroom. And for post-high school, it accurately reflects a student's level of achievement for college and career readiness, rather than just simply, does a student work hard? It shows whether or not they actually understand material and have the skills needed to be successful.
Thank you. Next question. What is going well with your grading principle?
I think a couple of things. So the nice thing about grading based on standards, it clearly defines for students where they stand in terms of their skills. When we use rubrics in the classroom, it provides students with a specific guide as to how they're graded and a roadmap for earning the grade that they hope to achieve. We use a 4-point scale in my classroom with a focus on standards, and that's really cut and dry for students. They understand that if they earned a 4 on something, they've exceeded standards, which means they have a deep level of understanding. If they've earned a 3, it means they've met standards, so they have a satisfactory level of understanding. A 2 is approaching standards, so there may be holes in their understanding or misconceptions to be addressed. And number 1 shows the student and the teacher that more teaching or support is needed. Also, the fact that we've moved to building in a 0 that is 50%, which means just mathematically, it's more equal in terms of grade percentages, so that if a student fails, doesn't turn in an assignment, which is a behavior, not a skill-based, it doesn't hurt their progress to the point that they can't make that up. And I think that's really absolutely essential. For my personal team, we are aligned. I teach American Lit at Timberline, and we're aligned all across our classes in terms of what is taught, how it's taught, and the rubrics we use, which means grades in all our classes are 100% equitable. So an A in my class is the same as an A in another class. And I think that's really important as well.
Thank you. And last question that we have for you tonight is, what are the areas of improvement from your perspective?
I think there is some difficulty in alignment if you're a teacher that has 3 or 4 preps, so you teach 3 or 4 different classes. Finding the time and the ability to check in with other teachers who are teaching the same classes is really hard. So sometimes that alignment doesn't take place, and that's something that we need to improve on. Sheer turnaround time for grading assignments is really difficult. If you're doing a longer assignment like an essay, I mean, if you even spend 5 minutes on an essay per essay and you've got 130 of them, that's like 10 hours of correcting. So sometimes that turnaround isn't as good as we'd like. And so I think that's something that we could improve on, is how can we make that a faster process so that students get faster feedback.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I'm really glad your sound worked out, because what you had to say tonight was really important for us.
Thank you.
So next, I'm going to turn it over to Graham Sacriston so he can talk about our breakout rooms and what's going to happen next.
Okay, and it's great to be here and great to listen to all the panelists. We're going to have breakout rooms. Participants and viewers get to choose which principal they are interested in, what breakout group they want to be in. But before we get into the mechanics, I have 4 questions. I'm sure that you have them as well. We'll have them in the breakout group, but I just want to go through them so that everybody hears them. And the first is a prompt. What questions do you have about this North Thurston Public Schools secondary grading principle? the one you're involved in. What is going well with this grading principle? That's the second, and it's similar to the panel discussion in a sense. What are the areas of improvement in this principle? And is there anything else you would like North Thurston Public Schools to consider related to grading? And with that, I believe the host is going to start assigning people, and we'll see how that goes.
All right, we should have everybody coming back to this meeting. So we'll wait a couple minutes to make sure everybody joins us. Unless there's a way to find out if we're all back at this time. It does look like people are still starting to come back, so it might take a little bit.
Hi,
Looks like we have a few more coming in.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thanks, Carmen. All right, I think we got most everybody back from what I can see on my end. So thank you all for joining us, rejoining us into the meeting. Now we're going to discuss, what we talked about in our breakout sessions. And so from each of the different principles, we're going to ask one individual to speak up. We did have leaders in each of the groups. So we'll start with principle number 1. I hope you guys found those breakout sessions informative, and I would love to hear some, we would all love to hear some feedback from that. So principle number 1, do you know who was the lead on that? If you don't mind going ahead.
I think I was the one that was supposed to speak, so I will. I'm Paul Dean from Timberline. And rather than go through each question, I'll try to hit some of the key points or questions that came up. There was some question specifically about the categories of splitting 80-20 with testing at the 80% of the weight and homework at 20 in one specific circumstance that needs to be looked at a little bit. Overall, I think there's a lot going well in terms of efforts to really try to make sure that the work that is being done is in fact reflective of what students know and the standards, their ability to meet the standards. We discussed a little bit about what we can do to try to mitigate the effect of an assignment that's not turned in, and how much that just not turning in an assignment can hurt a student's grade, which may or may not necessarily reflect what that students know. That their grade kind of takes a huge hit, particularly in the 0 to 100 traditional grading scale. So there's some talk about things that are happening, including the 4-point scale being a way to really still reflect what students know without a missing assignment really sinking a student's grade. We talked about desire, especially at the secondary level, and the difficulty that can come of having consistency across the board at the secondary level. With an example was given of a student who is just coming into 6th grade and all of a sudden now has 6 different classes that may have 6 slightly different grading practices, even within the guidelines that we have, and that there's a real benefit to as much consistency as we can have at the secondary level. And lastly, that there's still we've been working on this as a district for several years, and there's still guidance and mentoring necessary to support teachers to try to meet the needs of students within grading practices and doing all that we can to make sure that that the grades do reflect what students know and learn.
Thanks, Paul, for that recap. All right, so now we're going to move on to principle number 2. So we do need the individual that's led the group, if you don't mind jumping in now and explaining what you guys discussed in your breakout session.
I'm Courtney Crawford. I'm the principal at Aspire Middle School, and our principle 2 was students should have multiple opportunities to show what they know and can do. Unlike Mr. Dean, I'll probably go through the questions one by one for you guys. So our first question was, what questions do you have about the secondary grading principle? And our group, it wasn't so much a question, but just a thought, and that was around the equity piece and just really understanding that one size doesn't fit all. So really understanding that our students will benefit from a variety of different kind of assessments that will allow them to demonstrate their understanding and their knowledge in the different content areas. So making sure that piece is a part of capturing the assessments and making sure that kids that have that opportunity. And then what's going well with the grading principle, our members felt that it helps our students with their confidence. One parent shared that her kiddo was struggling with math, was able to go in and work with the teacher and get some one-on-one and then do some of those error analysis and really fine tune what was going on and then retake the test. And it really helped build his confidence in math. And also by allowing students to have multiple opportunities to demonstrate what they can do and what they understand, it helps to lessen that anxiety around testing and to help to curtail that kind of adversarial feel for taking a test. So that was another piece that our members felt that was important. And then the areas for improvement were just around communication. So as we do have these opportunities for our students to retake tests, it's really important that we're communicating all the different pieces to our not just our students, but our guardians and our parents as well, because there are support systems. And so, you know, the student might hear it in class and then get home and watch SpongeBob for 20 minutes and forget all the different pieces and steps in there. And so making sure that we're communicating out all those different opportunities and steps that are involved with taking the opportunities to retake tests is really important. And we had a really great and lively conversation, so we didn't quite make it to prompt 4.
Oh, that's understandable. Thank you, Courtney, for that recap. Appreciate that. Principle number 3, I believe we have Nick and Nate. We're going to do a recap on what we talked about as a breakout session.
Yes, I've got the notes here. So our principle is students need time to practice and learn from mistakes. Therefore, teachers are expected to incorporate a variety of assessment methods within their course and provide opportunities for reassessment. So I'll use the Courtney Crawford model. What questions do you have? The first question about prompt 1 was, what questions do you have about North NTPS secondary grading principle? The question was brought up, is there ever a time when you have to move on before a student has learned? You run out of time. What happens then? Well, we talked about the opportunities to reteach along the way, the opportunity to utilize formative assessments to, so if a student doesn't get it, it's not like they haven't gotten everything, right? There's pieces of it along the way we've been able to move through. Talked about the importance, kind of tied into number 2 of retakes, communication with families to make sure we're going together. One of the things we mentioned on here is that about this point was that really all these grading principles work together. So it's difficult to pull one out and say only that one stands alone. They all kind of work together to make this whole grading practices piece function properly. Second question prompt was, what is going well with this grading principle? So there's more opportunities to retake, ensure kids are learning what they need to know. Different kids learn different ways. They're able to express that different ways in multiple manners of assessment. And we saw that really, really clearly, especially last year with during COVID time when we were fully remote, and then partly remote and partly so hybrid, and now coming in this year, we're seeing where teachers are looking into various ways to assess and then how to reassess on that. One of the issues during this, it kind of goes into the third one, is it takes a lot of time, different ways to reach students with that learning. We're always learning and growing our skill set to give kids more options and choices. Student voice and student choice are critical to students' grades. Mentioned particularly students with learning disabilities, especially with their emphasis on UDL. This really helps many students who learn things in different ways. So we're able to emphasize that and to really provide equity all across the board for our students. Areas of improvement, different assessments are going to create more work for teachers. How are we going to allow for that, and how are we still going to make it functional for all as we're doing this? And we talked about Canvas as a game changer in this, allows us to be graded within Canvas on many things. This gives teachers more time. They don't have to recreate all the time. When it's on Canvas, they can update and modify as needed. We do need to be more consistent in our use of Canvas and align it a little bit better, so parents and students don't have time, don't have to navigate so many different ways. We have to figure out how to move forward for the students who are understanding. We talked about the importance of tutoring, like in our Power Up process we're going through, to help take the pressure off teachers and kids and give them more support outside of class time. And then, is there anything else you'd like to consider related to grading practices? We really just kind of finished that one up on number 3, where we talked about how we can leverage technology to support students outside the school day, and just keep working in this direction.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for the recap. So now we're on to our last group, Principal 4. I'm guessing Serenity is leading that group, as we've had the 2 high school principals before them. If not, please, whoever's jumping in for the principal group number 4.
I think we have a change up. I think we have a middle school.
Oh, there we go. Mixing it up.
Serenity did a great job of facilitating our group, but she's passed the torch to me for this part.
Take it away, Dave.
So I'm David Crane. I'm the principal at Nisqually, and we had Principal 4. We support learning through regular communication with families about student progress. And I think the other 3 principals actually touch on most of the things that we talked about, but I'll share some highlights. I think as we started wondering what questions we still have, the big one that remained was, what if there's misalignment between the teacher and parent? Much or too little communication. We had everyone represented in our group. We had parents and students and principals and teachers. And I think we just recognize there's still a gap between probably department to department, building to building, grade to grade. Just some more alignment probably is needed in terms of communication. I know at Nisqually that's the case. We did just continue to hear when we talk about what is going well, how powerful communication is. And so having tools like Skyward and Canvas accessible all the time for kids and parents is just kind of a new frontier for grading. I think it's a really powerful tool for everybody involved in the educational process. And we heard from our student representative just how much they do appreciate teacher feedback, and how Canvas has allowed for more regular feedback, and just how powerful that is. I think so many kids are craving knowing how they're doing and do they understand the concept. One piece when we talked about what are areas of improvement, I think just continues to be that alignment and ensure there's consistency in updating. I know we heard some stories of good updating and lack of updates from our student in maybe a class or 2. So just consistency, I think, is the big improvement that we can do in terms of communication. I think we have the tools there, but it definitely made me think of working with my team at the school and also the middle school principals, just to align and kind of just work with our teachers to be more consistent for families and kids.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave, for that recap. At this time, we'll turn over to Chuck Namit. He has our closing comments for today. So thank you all for joining. Chuck.
Thank you, Dave. Let me go back in time with just a little history. Years ago, the North Thurston Public Schools investigated ways to improve the success of our student grading with a workshop in 2007 by a fellow by the name of Ken O'Connor, who spoke on classroom assessment for student learning. Now, that was 15 years ago. And indeed, since then, the North Thurston Public Schools has continued its work, as indicated by Troy Oliver early on, our panelists, and then our breakout comments that Dave just monitored. On increased percentage for student passing grades 6 through 9 and keeping 10th grade students on track to graduate. By using these techniques as a variety of assessment methods, developing grading principles, allowing opportunities for reassessment, and especially communication between students and families. And indeed, this school board goal is preparing every student's success in their personalized learning trajectory so that they can graduate from high school and students can be successful in whatever they do in the future, such as college, attending post-secondary trade schools, or developing careers. So following this communication conversation, your board and the district professionals will examine your answers and of the questions that we provided for you in this community conversation. And with this information, the board and the superintendent and her administrative staff on October 21st will have a follow-up session to investigate ways to implement your suggestions. So in closing, as a board member, I personally appreciate, and I know our district also appreciates, the community members' attendance for this conference. And I want to thank you for supporting our schools. And I would encourage you to be ever more vigilant in terms of grading practices and your participation in our schools. So thank you very much for this evening, and I'm going to wish you a good night.
And before the board members go, this is a board meeting, so I would like to adjourn the meeting at 6:37. Thanks, everybody.